of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, has lefty hysteria over Angela Rayner's Basic Instinct Gate mutated into a full-blown attack on press freedom? I'll explain why I'm backing the Mail on Sunday for holding firm against attempted elite censorship. That's in my digest next. And I'll get the thoughts of my superstar panel too. The Daily Mail star columnist Amanda Plattel, esteemed political journalist John Sargent, and I'm very excited making her debut, broadcaster Ashley James. Plus, columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle is as furious as me about this drama. He's uncancelled and weighing in at 10:40. Should Russian sports stars be disqualified because of Putin's war? Should there be a blanket ban on taking the knee? Well, a man who's lived his entire life in the fast lane, Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone, is revved up and giving his verdict on the social dilemmas gripping sport in a special exclusive interview at 10:20. Don't miss that. Plus, he was the toast of the TV world before becoming one of Britain's biggest casualties of cancel culture after leading the charge in the war against woke. Father Ted and the IT crowd creator Graham Linehan, the quintessential outsider, gets his voice back at 9:45. With mooted presidential candidate Ron DeSantis making an example of diversity-mad Disney, could we finally be seeing the end of corporate wokism? Well, US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly is here on the battle that's gripped Florida and the world, actually, at 9:30. As Labour's Lisa Nandy comes out against her leader's obsession with lockdown misdemeanours, should Keir Starmer be focusing on Partygate or the cost of living crisis? Well, Labour MPs have literally been, look at this, sprinting away from that question. You're not going to believe this video that I'm going to play you shortly. But three people who definitely aren't are former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane, entrepreneur Charlie Mullins, and journalist and author Nina Mishkov. They'll duke it out in the clash at 9:20. Does Patrick Vallance have any right to be bossing us about on how to save the planet after causing COVID chaos? I say, wind your neck and Vallance, but what about my superstar panel? We'll find out at 10. And is Kellogg's right to fight back against nanny state junk food rules that will see supermarkets forced to cancel cereal? Plus, the moment Alec Baldwin discovered he had fatally shot a crew member on a film set has been made public. And it's a harrowing watch.
I do have some very unfortunate news to tell you. She didn't make it.
We'll bring you those stories and more in the Media Buzz at 10:30. And don't forget, you can get your first look at tomorrow's newspapers as they land right here throughout the show, and a brand new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass crown just before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. A bombshell verdict today where families who have always felt their loved ones were sacrificed in care homes in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic were vindicated. The High Court ruled that the discharging of hospital patients into these institutions without testing was unlawful. Dr. Kathy Gardner and Faye Harris, whose fathers both died after COVID hit their care homes in April and May 2020 respectively, took the government and then Health Secretary Matt Hancock to court, successfully arguing that his decisions caused, quote, a shocking death toll. Now, you might remember just last week, as Hancock gave evidence to me in my lockdown inquiry, he shamelessly defended discharging patients into social care without being tested and tried to distance himself from his claims that he had thrown a protective ring around care homes in the early days of the pandemic. Watch.
There was a testing capacity available. You chose not to use it on the people being discharged into the care homes.
Well, it had to be clinically prioritised. And to clinically prioritise...
No, but you just said the tests weren't available. Well, so I'm just making the point that they were available.
No, what I said was enough tests weren't available. Important difference.
Did care home operators warn your department right at the start of the pandemic not to discharge hospital patients into care homes without a test? Did they warn you of that?
We didn't have the enough tests available to be able to do that without removing tests from other people for whom they were a life-saving matter.
And let me just... do you acknowledge you were warned of that?
I don't have recollection of that.
You told Andrew Marr last June you didn't put a protective ring around care homes during the first wave.
I used that phrase. I used that phrase later, yeah, to describe the work that we did to learn the lessons from the first phase, the first wave, which meant that actually, in terms of protecting.
But I've looked into that. I've looked into that, and it's just not true, Mr. Hancock, because you actually used the phrase multiple times at the start of the pandemic, well before.
There's two ways of answering this. The first is that the issue you were raising about people having to move out of hospital in order to be able to save lives in hospitals, right? That was in March 2020. Later, I used this phrase, throwing a protective ring, in May. So it's absolutely true, the chronology.
Well, the High Court was with me. And outside the court, Dr. Gardner delivered a damning blow to Hancock, branding his protective ring claim as, quote, nothing more than a despicable lie. My digest on the Rayner hysteria in just a moment. Then my superstar panel weigh in. Tonight, the Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Patel, she's involved in this story in a way you may not know. Political journalist John Sargent. And here for the first time tonight, welcome to broadcaster Ashley James. But before all of that, the news headlines at 9 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. A man's been charged with the murder of a 33-year-old woman who's been missing since last week. It's believed Katie Kenyon travelled in a Ford Transit van which headed from Burnley towards the Bolton by Bowland area last Friday morning. The mum of two has not been seen since. Lancashire police say 50-year-old Andrew Burfield is due to appear at Blackburn Magistrates Court tomorrow. The High Court has ruled that government policies on discharging patients from hospitals to care homes at the start of the pandemic were unlawful. The case was brought forward by two women whose fathers died from COVID-19 in 2020. Judges said the regulations failed to take into account the risk to elderly and vulnerable residents from non-symptomatic transmission. The Chancellor has been cleared of breaching the ministerial code over his family's tax affairs. Boris Johnson's standards advisor also ruled that there was no conflict of interest in Rishi Sunak having held a US green card. Mr Sunak referred himself for investigation after it emerged his wife held non-domicile tax status, exempting her from paying UK tax on overseas earnings. The Chief Whip is investigating claims that a Tory MP has been caught watching porn on his mobile phone in the Commons. It's after several newspapers reported that the allegations were raised during a meeting of Tory MPs. Conservative MP for Mid Derbyshire, Pauline Latham, says the culture within Parliament needs to change.
Whoever it is, and I have no idea, although I had heard the story, they should go. They should go, and that will mean their ministerial career is absolutely shot. Their parliamentary career too, probably, because that is totally and utterly, well, it's just not excusable in any way.
Councillors in York have voted unanimously to remove Prince Andrew's Freedom of the City of York honour. It's after he was accused of sexual assault by Virginia Giuffre, allegations which he denies and have been settled outside of court. The City Council is also calling for the Prince to be stripped of his Duke of York royal title, something that Parliament must vote on. Both Buckingham Palace and a spokesperson for the Duke have declined to comment. City of York councillor Darryl Smalley told GB News they're trying to protect the city's reputation.
Proposed the motion to remove the honorary freedom today, just to distance York from Prince Andrew. I think we've had many months now of our city being linked with him as those allegations came out, as the court case rumbled on, and the subsequent reaction to it.
This is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now let's get straight back to Dan Wootton tonight.
This week has provided a chilling example of what happens when liberal groupthink and attacks on the freedom of the press collide. As you know by now, the Mail on Sunday reported at the weekend on a story sourced from an anonymous Conservative MP that Labour's deputy leader had uncrossed her legs while in the Commons to distract the Prime Minister during PMQs. Now, lots of people didn't like that story. They believe the Mail on Sunday's highly respected political editor should have censored what the MP said they had heard from Rayner, and that the newspaper's editor should never have published the story. When they did publish the story, all hell broke loose.
The Prime Minister has been in contact with Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner to condemn an article written about her in yesterday's Mail on Sunday, calling it misogynistic.
Boris Johnson has condemned a Mail on Sunday article that claimed Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner tried to distract him in the House of Commons by crossing and uncrossing her legs.
The story has sparked a heated debate about sexism in Parliament.
Now, MPs across the political divide have condemned an article in the Mail on Sunday about Labour's Deputy Leader. They've condemned it as sexist and misogynistic.
This is just disgusting, rank sexism, rank misogyny. And it's not just Angela that faces this, lots of women in politics too, and that's why obviously we need to call out anybody involved in this, but we need a culture change as well.
I have to say, I thought it was the most appalling load of sexist, misogynist tripe, and I immediately got in touch with Angela, and we had a very friendly exchange, and, you know, if we ever find who was responsible for it, well, I don't know what we'll do with them, but we'll be the terrors of the earth.
I just thought, is that what people expect and think about what I do? You know, all I worry about when I'm at the dispatch box is doing a good job and being able to, you know, do justice to my constituents and the work that I'm doing. So I was just really crestfallen.
I share the views expressed by a wide range of members, including, I believe, the Prime Minister, that yesterday's article was reporting substantiated claims of misogynistic and offensive. Those are what we believe.
So that's groupthink in action there, as the chattering classes wound themselves up into a hysterical frenzy. But last night, the Mail on Sunday and its editor David Dillon fought back against what feels like a very worrying trend for the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, to try and dictate what newspapers publish. It comes as the newspaper's political columnist, Dan Hodges, reported 3 more MPs, one of them a woman, have privately come forward to back up the original report about Rayner purposefully uncrossing her legs to distract Boris Johnson. Now, they insist it was Rayner who made the joke herself during a night on the Commons terrace. As Mr Dillon wrote in his rejection to Hoyle, the Mail on Sunday deplores sexism and misogyny in all its forms. However, journalists must be free to report what they are told by MPs about conversations which take place in the House of Commons, however unpalatable some may find them. Britain rightly prides itself on its free press. That freedom will not last if journalists have to take instruction from officials at the House of Commons, however august they may be, on what they can report and not report. The drive this week to say newspapers should not quote MPs anonymously is nothing more than an attempt, a very blatant attempt, to shut down freedom of the press. Without anonymous deep throats, journalists would have been unable to break a vast array of stories in the public interest. So when you hear elites say they don't believe newspapers should rely on anonymous sources, remember what they're really saying is, we don't want you to know what those in power are really saying behind the scenes when making decisions. As the Daily Mail raged in a powerful leader column today, are newspapers now expected to tailor their reportage to the whims of what MPs consider appropriate? Clearly cowed, the Speaker is now trying to rewrite history. Hoyle released a news statement today saying, I firmly believe in the duty of reporters to cover Parliament, but I would also make a plea, nothing more, for the feelings of all MPs and their families to be considered, and the impact on their safety when articles are written. I would just ask that we are all a little kinder. That is what I wanted to talk about at tomorrow's meeting. What complete and utter baloney. I will not take a lecture about kindness from the bloke who presides over the weekly nasty-off that is PMQs. It's also ironic, given the venom that has been spewing from MPs towards the journalist who wrote the original story. A reporter's job is not to show kindness to MPs. It is to accurately and fairly hold power to account. Massive respect to the Mail on Sunday for holding firm this week in the wake of an unseemly pile-on designed to censor Britain's already under threat free press. But to respond now, my superstar panel. The Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Platel, the political journalist John Sargent, and the broadcaster Ashley James. Well, Amanda, I'm clearly going to kick off with you today. I know the Mail on Sunday and the Daily Mail are different newspapers, but they are connected in some way when it comes to this story. And, of course, some suggestion, Amanda, that a column that you wrote back in January might have kicked this whole thing off. Explain.
Dan, I find this whole thing extraordinary because I watched that PMQs, and she did have... This is a woman who prided herself on her bother boots and her donkey jackets, right? With a kind of scruffy hair and scruffy makeup. Suddenly she turns up at PMQs. She's got her hair extensions in, the big curly things. I know the hair extensions, by the way.
How?
Because my makeup artist on a recent job told me. He did them. She brought them in a bag, OK? So I'm not going past that. I wrote that exact quote back in January, at the beginning of January, and I watched that in PMQs, and I said, is crossing and uncrossing her legs, is she doing a Sharon Stone and appealing to Boris Johnson's basic instincts?
Yeah, I think we can show that column
gosh.
you wrote. So there it is. There it is, Amanda Platel. OK, and...
So then there was no offence, right?
Yeah.
So that was, you know, the Mail on Saturday has about 5 million readers, and that's just for the paper, not online. So millions and millions of people saw that. It would have been clocked in Labour because it's my Westminster section. No offence caused then. Maybe it's because a woman can't be misogynistic. That was my take on it. She was flaunting her femininity. She came completely dolled up. I love getting dolled up. I have no criticism of someone doing that. But then to turn the whole argument and say, oh, they were noticing what I wore, fluffing up her hair extensions, I just think it's totally disingenuous. And she's milked this whole story for everything she could. And I'm so proud of the Mail that they just stood up to the Speaker, which is a very big thing, and that they just said, this is totally inappropriate, And you cannot start, as you said in your intro, you cannot start blurring the lines between Parliament and the free press. We have our own body, which we have to abide by, and it's not the Speaker.
What's particularly fascinating is that until this story was published on Sunday, Angela Rayner seemed to find this whole story quite hilarious. So I want to play a clip from a podcast, but do you want to set it up, Amanda?
Well, it's just incredible because it turns out that in January she was going around, she suggested Sharon Stone, obviously nicked from me, so I think I have copyright on it.
Well, exactly, this is where you kick this whole thing
so
off.
I'm really offended because, you know, but anyway, she was playing on it and saying, oh gosh, and used a lot of really horrible language in that thing.
Well, let's listen to Angela. This is the podcast in January, and then John and Ashley will get you to respond off the bat.
There is a tint of misogyny in it. I've got to say, you know, I get quizzed on. Every time I do a PMQ, somebody has an opinion on what I want. Did you see the meme about Sharon Stone, like I was doing at the last PMQs? I was mortified. You what? Like, they did this whole, like, meme about me apparently doing the whole, you know, the whole... I was like, when did they do that?
What's that? Like, I haven't seen that at all.
Did you not see, like, the Fatal Attraction thing when they did the whole thing?
I mean, I've seen the film, but I wasn't aware that...
I wasn't aware I did it, but apparently, like, there was this whole meme about how my dress was, like, you know, a bit revealing, but I didn't think it was. It was a perfectly suitable Karen Millen in the sale, by the way.
But what was the theory, that you were doing that to distract Boris?
I don't... Don't take much, does it? I don't need to do that.
So, John Sargent, Angela Rayner didn't appear at all offended at this point.
No, she didn't appear offended at that point. She certainly tried to make an impact when she was taking part in Prime Minister's questions, and actually she did very well. That's the point. She did very well. The story then becomes, like so many of these things, one thing then leads to another, and you get a sort of strange lever effect on stories. We get a little item, not very interesting, another little item, but oddly similar, and then the lever swings, and people are like, oh, sensation. Often happens in journalism, as you say, it's sort of weird.
Well, it's the groupthink.
It's
the Westminster groupthink.
The Westminster groupthink then people then get very excited, and then of course people then ask their opinion, as if this is a public remark, as if, you know, these people talking about Angela Rayner somehow said all this in public to the entire country, which of course they didn't. No. But once you're into that position, well, what do you think about that? People have then got to respond. After the Me Too movement, everyone then knows what have you now got to say? So they all say this is all shocking. When I was a correspondent at Westminster for many years, people said the most extraordinary things, particularly about women. But they just did. That's the way they behave.
I imagine that you would argue that the world has changed.
I mean, I still think that there is a big systematic problem in Parliament. I mean, we know at the moment that there are 56 members of the House under investigation for sexual misconduct. There is an issue with sexism and misogyny, not just in Parliament, but also in the media and also in society as a whole. And I am supportive of free press and freedom of speech. However, the media not only reflects society, it also forms these attitudes. And I believe that Sir Lindsay Hoare was not trying to control the media or to limit free speech. Because let's not forget that only recently he rejected calls to remove a parliamentary pass from a journalist in Parliament. So he recognises the importance...
But would you say that the Mail on Sunday journalist, right, who was given this information by a Conservative MP who said, I heard Angela Rayner joking about this, should he have not published it? Should he have self-censored?
I don't think it's a question of should he have self-censored, but I think it is taking responsibility for the onslaught that would come from that, because let's not forget, like, rape and death threats have become the norm for female MPs. Lots of female MPs have come out and talked about this. And just last year alone, a fifth of people working in Parliament said that they'd face sexual
So you worry it would put females off, this sort of coverage would put females off from wanting to enter the public sphere?
Well, also from wanting to enter Parliament and to become MPs. And obviously it's so important that we have more female MPs. And the media and politics are closely linked, because it is very hard to attract women and girls into politics when they know that their body, their hair extensions are all going to be scrutinised.
So, Maddie, should you tonight, come on, you've just heard what Ashley said, should you tonight feel damn guilty for the fact that you have just spoken about Angela Rayner's hair extensions on national television?
I've outed her hair extensions,
But
and
can
I
I
have no
just say,
regrets.
who cares if she's wearing hair extensions? And who
Yes,
cares
Amanda
if she's
Patel,
got
who
such
cares?
nice- It shouldn't affect
No, but
her
everybody-
ability to be a leader.
No.
I will say this is not an isolated incident where we scrutinise female MPs. Like, remember, Tracy Brabin had to come out and defend wearing, like, her dress that had one shoulder off. She had to say that she wasn't a slapper. And it's not just what the media are saying, it's showing what the public...
final word, John.
OK, just a very brief story
Why
about...
does the bloke get a final word?
Can I please have a final word?
Are you going to call me a misogynist?
OK, no. So, one brief story about Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
She bought a new dress she was very proud of and wanted to wear it at the Dublin summit. And she talked to her dresser and said, oh, I don't feel like this. They're going to be so awful to me. And then she said, I'm not going to wear it. They're not worth it, meaning the leaders of the European
But it shows that
Council.
women have to think about what they dress.
It does
Come on,
show that.
Come on, can either of us, I mean, who has thought more about the way they dress tonight? I would say probably me, because you don't
Me.
have to think.
I would say John. He looks utterly spectacular.
How many minutes
Also-
did you spend thinking about
A
this
lot of
jacket?
it. But what I didn't think about, which I should have done, was hair extensions.
No.
That's what I should have done.
Amanda Liddle, John Sargent, Ashley James, my superstar panel, and they are here all evening. Rod Liddle on this Angela Rayner story later too. You're not going to want to miss that. But also coming up, as mooted presidential candidate Ron DeSantis goes to war with Disney's kingdom of woke, will corporations now stop sacrificing values for liberal activism? Megyn Kelly gives her analysis of the battle that's gripped Florida at 9:30. But up next, as Labour's Lisa Nandy comes out against her leader's obsession with lockdown misdemeanors, should Keir Starmer be focusing on Partygate or the cost of living crisis? Want to know what you think on this before we get to the clash? Dan at gbnews.uk, at gbnews on social media. We've got a poll running there too. The results next.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Dry and bright again for most tomorrow. It will be a bit of a chilly start once more, with temperatures tonight under clear skies again getting down close to and a touch below freezing in some places. High pressure continues to bring the dry, fine weather, but the winds coming around the high pressure just feeding in more cloud again across eastern areas, so that cloud thickening up somewhat overnight. That increasing cloud will help to stop temperatures falling too far, but for parts of northern England, southern Scotland, North Wales, we are going to see a frost, certainly in rural areas. Temperatures in towns and cities generally holding up a little bit above freezing, but even through the central belt of Scotland, we could see frost even in urban areas here. So a chilly start to Thursday, but generally another sunny start. Quite a lot of cloud across these eastern parts of England once more, and the small chance of the odd shower across Lincolnshire and Norfolk. And through the day, the risk of one or two showers across the far north of Scotland. But for most, it's dry and bright. Some good spells of sunshine for South Wales, southern England. 16, 17, say, in Southampton, 14 in Belfast. Much cooler again in the east, particularly where it stays cloudy through parts of Yorkshire and East Anglia. We'll see that cloud perhaps breaking up a little bit more during the afternoon into the evening. Still a few showers through the night across northern Scotland, but for most it'll be clear again, and again a hint of frost on Friday morning. Again, it's a similar day, dry and bright with plenty of sunny spells across the west, always more cloud across parts of eastern England. Maybe one or two more scattered showers on Friday over eastern and southeastern parts of Scotland. But for most, it's dry, and you get the sunshine. It feels pretty pleasant with temperatures in the mid-teens where it stays cloudy, and on some eastern coasts. Again, it's going to be chilly with temperatures struggling. But the high pressure that's moved in is sticking around, certainly for the start of the weekend. So for many, it's another fine and bright day on Saturday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Time now for The Clash. Now, as I said in my digest yesterday, there's another Labour civil war as Keir Starmer's dogged focus on Partygate has been criticised by Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Lisa Nandy, who believes the leader should be focusing on the cost of living crisis. So today, I sent my producer Caroline Gawley to Westminster to see if any Labour MPs would have the balls to go on the record.
Is Lisa Nandy right that Starmer...
I don't know what you're talking about, I'm sorry.
...by going on about Partygate rather than the cost of living crisis?
I've no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to meet a school party now and do my constituency work. I don't know who you are, so goodbye. I don't know what you're talking about. Honestly, we got home at midnight last night.
Well, you know about the cost of living crisis and you know about Partygate, so which is more important to people in the country?
Goodbye.
So I'm just rushing off for a minute. Does it make him look out of touch, though? Hello? Sorry, Caroline at GB News. Can I just ask you, is the Starmer looking out of touch by going on about Partygate so much and not focusing on the cost of living?
Very much focused on the cost of living. That's what my constituents are raising with me on the doorstep. I've had many Conservative voters switching over to Labour, both over their concerns over Partygate, but also about the cost of living.
Well, clearly people's immediate cost of living is something that's a key concern, but they can't be dealt with as an issue with a Prime Minister who doesn't have authority of the House.
We are focused on the cost of living, and most definitely we are calling it out every turn, every time we get up and stand up in the chamber.
I'll run with you.
Labour MPs literally running away from addressing their internal civil war. Come on, have to take another look at that snivelling little wuss again. That's Dr Rupa Huq, Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton there, sprinting from the GB News cameras. So, as discontent in the Labour ranks mounts, should Keir Starmer be focusing on Partygate or the cost of living crisis? Dan at gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews. We've got our poll running there too. But weighing in on this now, the former Labour Minister Dennis McShane, the broadcaster and author Nina Mishkov, and founder of Pimlico Plumbers Charlie Mullins. Dennis, so Labour MPs don't want to talk about this, but isn't enough? And Keir Starmer has to start focusing on what really matters, especially given he has his own little indiscretion with his own little Partygate where he was downing beer at a work meeting.
I half agree with you, Dan.
That's better than not agreeing at all, I guess.
Liars, liars, pants on fire, accusations hurled across the chamber, whoever's in power. And there used to be a BBC friend of mine, a woman called Joy Johnson, who was employed by the BBC just to shout at John Major, "Will you resign, Mr. Prime Minister?" I didn't think it was worthy of a very good journalist. But the plain fact is our Constitution insists that the Prime Minister must not lie to Parliament, mislead Parliament, and however you twist it around, we all agree that that's what Boris Johnson did.
Well, he said
frankly,
he wasn't intending to. He presented
yeah. I'd love to say I wasn't intending to get involved with expenses troubles. I mean, come on. I'm sure that reasoning was tossed out in legal theory 200 years ago. So that is a serious problem. We have no written constitution, all the rest of it. I actually think there's been an overfocus on this. I tell you why. Because it would be far more effective for Labour if the people who take out the Prime Minister are his own MPs, are the voters next Thursday. We're going to have a very, very big municipal election. Labour starts from actually a bad position. They won so many seats. It'll be difficult to win some more, but I'm working in London and I hear confident reports of Labour Tory councillors going. So I do that. And yes, I think we have missed a trip. We haven't noticed the inflation twice out of France.
Nina Mishkov, doesn't Dennis McShane have a point? Labour could take the high ground, focus on what really matters. Instead, we've got hypocritical Starmer constantly banging on about Partygate when he broke the rules himself last year in Hartlepool.
Well, I don't think he's hypocritical at all. And quite frankly, in today's
Did you see him downing booze?
Prime Minister's question time. Well, the police investigated and said there was nothing to investigate.
Well, they're looking at it again.
I doubt very much whether they will. They were just answering a letter. The thing is, today, Keir Starmer spent the entire Prime Minister's questions tackling Boris Johnson on the economy. He told Boris Johnson that the IMF said that predicted that our economy in next year would be have had the highest inflation and would be the slowest growing, and kept hammering the points home. So he's doing both things at once. But the thing is, you mustn't let Partygate go, because it's not just that he broke the laws that he made, but the thing is, nobody will get rid of this completely inappropriate Prime Minister who's a liability both at home and abroad.
In your opinion, in your opinion, not in your opinion, Charlie Mullins. Let me bring Charlie in. Charlie, do you think Keir Starmer looks ridiculous by banging on about Partygate when, let's be honest, we all know, we've all seen the pictures, he did exactly the same thing. He was at a work event, socialising when he wasn't meant to, downing beer, having a curry. Look, there's the proof, Charlie.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's pretty common knowledge now that he's done the same thing. And if Boris has been investigated, then surely he would do it about Starmer. But moving on, we really need to move on to issues that matter. We're 2 years away from the election now, so he should be putting stuff out there that's going to help the people, whether it be, dropping the cost of energy, dropping the cost of fuel, or something a bit more sort of productive, rather than worrying about a party that's been and gone.
Nina?
The thing is, Boris Johnson is a complete liability at home. The government we are lumbered with has been chosen by him. So we are left with ministers who are not fit for purpose. We have a Home Office.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Keir Starmer. Nina, this debate is about Keir Starmer. Should Keir Starmer be talking about Partygate, or should he be talking about the cost of living crisis? And all you're doing is slagging off Boris Johnson. What about Keir Starmer?
Who is attacking Boris Johnson over Partygate so we can get this Prime Minister out. And the thing is, this government, on the economy, on energy, on foreign policy, on immigration, it has been a complete disaster. He has put people in power who should not be in power.
But Dennis wants Boris out too, Nina.
Well, that's fair enough.
And Dennis, you say the focus on Partygate actually could turn voters off. And Lisa and Andy, come on, this is not someone who wants Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, Dennis. She's a front bencher who disagrees with the Starmer strategy.
And that's why I nominated her or voted for her in the election 2 years ago. I think she's really in touch with huge swathes of opinion in Britain that are ignored, if I may say so, by the Conservatives. But, I wrote a book last year. I was on GB News presenting it late last year called Must Labour Always Lose? And one point in it is how ruthless the Tories are in getting rid of prime ministers if they think they're going to lose them some seats. They did it to Margaret Thatcher, they did it to Anthony Eden, they did it to Neville Chamberlain, and I still think they might do it to Boris Johnson. Now, Labour perhaps might want to keep a wounded duck, lame duck prime minister, now proven and accepted as a liar, in power, limping towards the election. Are we that sure, I speak as a Labour guy, that we want to boot him out?
Saying. That's a very cynical approach. I think most right-thinking people would want somebody out so that we have a decent government and a better living.
Charlie Mullins, do you think Nina's right that folk really have lost faith with Boris Johnson?
Well, not really. I mean, he's still the best man for the job. I mean, if we're talking about a party, well, no, why are you laughing?
Why are you laughing, Nina?
Listen, I mean, that is so out of touch with what people think. As I said, 72% of people think he's a liar.
Really?
How did he win a landslide election?
Hundreds of thousands of people who are mourning,
Nina, just let Charlie make his point.
What do people think about Starmer? He's a wet fish. He's got no new ideas.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does have ideas.
Really? Tell me what they are. All I keep hearing is about Partygate.
OK, on energy, tax the fat cats. Why not? We get some money off them.
OK, high taxes. That's his new idea. But look, fascinating debate. Thank you so much for having it. That was the former Labour Minister, Dennis McShane, the broadcaster and author, Nina Mishkoff, and founder of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins. So who do you agree with on this? Eden on Twitter says concentrating on Partygate is far easier for Starmer, as he has no real solutions to deal with the cost of living. From Adrian, Starmer should focus on cost of living, COVID, furlough, fraud and the government failure to protect care homes. And from Bosch, you can do both when you're a good leader like he is. So Bosch is with Nina. And your verdict is now in. Just 9% of you think Starmer's focus should be on Partygate, while 91% of you say he needs to look at the cost of living crisis. Coming up, he bravely sacrificed his stellar reputation to stand up for biological women as he became one of Britain's biggest victims of cancel culture. Father Ted and the IT crowd creator Graham Linehan, the ex-insider who's now an outsider, gets his voice back very soon. But first, as Ron DeSantis stands up for sanity in his war with Disney, will the Mickey Mouse Company's diversity obsession wake people up to damaging corporate wokism? US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly gives her analysis on the battle of values gripping Florida next.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests.
And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Cancelled Father Ted creator Graham Linehan is here in just a moment, but it's time now for star US journalist and podcaster Megyn Kelly. The row between the woke world of Disney and Florida is rumbling on after its governor Ron DeSantis suggested he may take more action to limit the company's self-governing status in the state. The Republican is warring with the Mickey Mouse company after it criticised his parental rights and education bill, and its woke agenda was exposed by Disney bosses in this leaked video call.
I'm here as a mother of two queer children, actually. One of our execs stood up and said, you know, we only have a handful of queer leads in our content. And I went, what? That can't be true.
Our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness.
Last summer, we removed all of the gendered greetings in relationship to our lives feels. So we no longer say ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We don't want to just assume because someone might be in our interpretation, maybe presenting as female, that they may not want to be called princess.
DeSantis has fired back. Look.
This is the right thing to do just on the basis of those Zoom videos of very high up people in this corporation in Disney. And they're talking about their intentional agenda to inject sexuality in the programming that's provided to our youngest kids. The glee that these people had in these videos, that they were going to get this stuff in. And so it's really, really problematic that when a company had been so synonymous with parents of young children, to yes, come out against the Parents' Rights Bill, but then to have those videos produced where they're doing that. And, you know, I'm just not comfortable having that type of agenda get special treatment in my state. I just can't do it.
Megyn Kelly, Florida versus Disney. Who's winning?
It's getting interesting, isn't it? At least it's getting interesting now, Dan. I don't know that Florida will ultimately win this fight, although I'm not ready to bet against them. But I think what most of us over here on the side of reason are applauding is the fight itself. Somebody's punching the bullies back in their noses. And it's about time. You know, these woke corporations are used to doing whatever they want and bullying the citizens into submission. The overwhelming majority of Florida citizens supported the DeSantis law that Disney took a stand against. And that law basically said that for K through third graders, all right, we're talking 5 to 8, maybe 9-year-olds, you are not allowed to, in the classroom instruction, include lessons about gender identity and sexual identity because they're too young. And then beyond that, if you include lessons about it, it should be age appropriate. That's it. These teachers who are like, what if they ask me about my partner and I won't be able to say I'm gay? That's a lie. That's not what's happening. You can say you're gay. You just can't put it in the curriculum and start teaching about sexual or gender identity for the really young children. Doesn't prevent the parents from discussing it, etc. So the lies about this bill have been rampant, but the Floridians, including a majority of Democrats, support the law. That's why it passed and DeSantis signed it. Disney, however, with this very weird woke agenda, which you just got a glimpse of on those tapes, feels differently. And Disney, which has devoted its entire business to the joy of children and treating children with respect and convincing parents that they can trust them to offer products that will be in the children's best interests and will not be touching any third rails, has done a complete 180. Many people have said Walt Disney is rolling over in his grave now. Oh, they don't want to say hello. They don't want to say boys and girls. Okay, what are they going to do about the enormous Disney Cinderella castle that you just showed a picture of that's looking at you as soon as you walk into Disney? What about all the Cinderella cafes where they ask the little girls if they want a little wand and if they want to get their hair done like princesses? Like, are we getting rid of all of that? Can there be any princesses now? I mean, they've basically submitted to the weirdest of the woke inside of their company, and God bless the employees who leaked those tapes, revealed themselves as having to has sneaking queerness into every little video frame and cartoon frame they possibly can.
Well, yeah, Megan, unless they're selling their latest animation to a state like China or Saudi Arabia, and then they're more than happy to censor. So I'm sorry, these folk at Disney are complete hypocrites.
Well, that's what DeSantis was saying. Governor DeSantis was saying, I'm sure that if our bill had said you can't mention anything about what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs, Disney wouldn't have said anything. They wouldn't have had any problem with snuffling out that message. But when it comes to the young children and trying to tell them that they shouldn't be teaching the little boys that they might be girls, which literally happened to my son in his New York school. So don't tell me it doesn't happen. Not him in particular, but his class. That they object to. So Disney's ruining its reputation. It's lost billions in stock value since it started this fight. And now DeSantis has basically revoked, and this Florida state legislature has revoked Disney's special status over the areas of Florida that encompass Disney World. They had an elevated status above the normal taxpayers that allowed them to not use the Disney fire, to not use the Disney sewage, to basically run their own little town there and have an independence that most towns don't have. And that was actually very good for Disney in terms of its management and its pocketbook. And DeSantis and the Florida lawmakers have now taken that away. It's being challenged. Disney filed a challenge this week saying, we have a deal that's since 1967 that says if you want to revoke any of our special status, you got to pay us the outstanding value of our bond, which is $1 billion in this case. The next move is DeSantis's. I wouldn't underestimate him.
Megyn Kelly, it is a fascinating battle. We will keep a watch of it, and I know you're across it on your brilliant Megyn Kelly show, which you can find on Sirius XM in the US, YouTube internationally, and the way that I listen as a podcast. Megyn, thank you. We'll speak next week.
Thanks, Dan.
But coming up, does Patrick Vallance have any right to be bossing us about on how to save the planet after causing COVID chaos? I'm wondering when the sad sack will just leave us alone, if I'm being honest, to live our lives. What do my superstar panel think? They'll give their verdict on Vallance at 10. We'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages there too. But first, he was the toast of the TV world before becoming one of Britain's biggest casualties of cancel culture after leading the charge in the war against woke. Father Ted and the IT crowd creator Graham Linehan, the quintessential outsider, gets his voice back next.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Graham Linehan is tonight's outsider. Now, as the man behind Father Ted and the IT crowd, Graham was not so long ago one of the most cherished members of the metropolitan elite. But after he was booted off Twitter for defending the rights of biological women, he's become a victim of cancel culture. So, does he believe that Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter could change his fortunes? Well, I'm delighted to say that Graham joins me now. And Graham, I wrote about you actually in my column for the Mail Online yesterday because I said that as alongside probably Dr. Robert Malone on the COVID side and Donald Trump on the political side, you were one of those high-profile silenced folk who Musk, I think, needs to immediately reinstate to the platform once he takes it over. I mean, do you think that will happen? And do you think it will make a difference? Can one man make a difference to getting the voice back for people like you?
Gosh, that's a very good question. I'm not sure. It's kind of like a system-wide problem we have at the moment. Yeah. I think that Elon Musk, he may well solve the problem of Twitter, but there's also things like Wikipedia, which has very, very heavily biased moderators. My solicitor actually watched my page and saw that if you changed an entry, like my solicitor tried to change an edit from anti-trans to pro-feminist, for instance, and it was changed back within 15 minutes. Wow. So these these little things are happening all over the place. I had a shop that I started to sell. I had a T-shirt of a cartoon of myself with the words "reality is real" on it. And we very carefully went through it to make sure that we weren't selling anything that could be seen as transphobic. The only thing we thought could get us into trouble was a joke about men cheating at women's sports. So we deliberately left it out. It was up for a day, and then it was taken down because it was mass reported.
So all of these tech companies work together. So let's just go back one step, Graham, because it was Twitter that actually caused your cancellation. And you talk about this mass reporting, and that's what happened to you because you spoke up for the rights of biological women, just in the same way, by the way, that someone like J.K. Rowling has now done, but you did it first, or you were one of the first high-profile people with a big showbiz profile, very accepted, by the way, in that London liberal bubble, but it was Twitter that actually caused your cancellation. So can you just explain what happened?
Well, I would actually say I was cancelled before Twitter. The Guardian kind of published a story about me taking the word of a person who was using their trans identity basically to con people. And they used that to say that I was harassing trans people online. Twitter then basically just ran with this image of me that was being amplified everywhere by loads of Twitter users, and banned me without telling me why. They told the press it was because I was supposedly misusing the platform. But I had a number of rules to make sure that I always stayed ahead of Twitter's terms and conditions. You know, I never misgendered anyone. I was always trying to play by their rules. But just like Megan Murphy in Canada, you just get banned for, you know, random reasons. And the last tweet that I tweeted, and so I guess it was for this, simply said, "Men aren't women, though." You know what I mean? So it's like just
which Robert Winston has confirmed, one of our eminent scientists, just recently. No, I mean, I thought the cancellation of you from Twitter was really the start of what became a snowball of loads of people stating provable facts being censored by big tech. And obviously this has now resulted on Elon Musk's purchase. But what was so shocking, Graham, is for you, it obviously resulted in total career and personal ruin. I mean, you are the man behind Father Ted, and I'm correct in saying, aren't I, that now the creators or the co-creators or the people who own the Father Ted brand, I guess, are trying to pay you off because they're so terrified of having you involved, even though essentially you are the man behind the show.
Yeah, and I'm the man behind the musical. It was my idea. A lot of the concepts for the songs are mine. It's been my baby for about 7 or 8 years, and it's just extraordinary to think that just to please a bunch of extremists, and they are extremists. Anyone who believes that a woman can have a penis is an extremist, and a homophobic extremist at that, because lesbians do not have a penis. Gay men do not have vaginas. This is homophobia and conversion therapy. And for standing up to it, I'm being told by Hat-Trick and Sonia Friedman Productions that I'm somehow in the wrong. And it's just outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And you're right, it is a completely metropolitan elite thing. All these people are terrified of America, because America is where this ideology is coming from. I think it's a form of American cultural imperialism, in fact. And they want careers over there. So they're all just kind of pussyfooting around this ridiculous ideology that no one outside of it, no one in the real world believes. I'm sure you've heard the phrase cis, or cis woman. This is a phrase that has to be explained every time it's said, because ordinary people never understand what it means, because the word trans isn't explained either. So this is a completely confusing, incoherent ideology that we're all supposed to go along with, that needs eternal training from the likes of Stonewall, who are getting, bundles of cash from the confusion that they're supposedly solving. And all the while, a woman of color today collapsed from the stress of the trial, the case that Stonewall has put her under, I mean, it's just, I just find it extraordinary that I'm in the position where I'm fighting nearly the entire left on this, who I thought were progressive and who I thought were on the...
And that's the point, isn't it? Because to me, this isn't about politics. This is not a left or right issue. Because if you look at someone like J.K. Rowling, she's very much on the left of politics too. And she's been cancelled by exactly the same sort of people who walked away from you.
Well, and if you ask people to say what she said that was wrong in her beautiful, compassionate essay about why single-sex spaces are important to women like her, who's a survivor of domestic abuse, they don't have an answer, because she didn't say anything offensive. Her piece was completely compassionate. But you have this strange kind of whispering campaign where rumors are reported as facts, and everything is a dog whistle, Everything is a dog whistle. So you really can't say anything. They've given women no room in which they can maneuver and argue for their rights. No room. They've stolen the words that are essential for these women to argue for their rights. And it's sorry, that's a reminder that I'm doing this show that just rang out.
You're on.
they're putting women in an absolutely impossible situation. And the reason I added my voice to it all was because, I had a big platform. And these women were suffering in silence. One of the things I found is that when you put a spotlight onto this behavior, onto the bullying and the harassment and the vile abuse, I mean, the things that have been said about Alison Bailey today. An Irish Times book reviewer said, Alison Bailey dead by... That's an Irish Times, that's a book reviewer for the Irish Times.
I know, and we see what they're saying about J.K. Rowling. Well, look, Graham, thank you for being, and I know this B word is used a little too often these days, but I am going to say it to you. Thank you for being brave, because when you're walking away from your career, and when you're walking away from financial security, but you do it because you so fundamentally believe something, for me, that is the example of bravery. And I hope you come back soon and we'll talk more about it. But that's Graham Linehan, the creator.
Thank you, Dan.
Father Ted.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. And tonight, as lefty hysteria grows over Angela Rayner's Basic Instinct gate, columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle is uncancelled and imploring anyone who cherishes a free press to speak out now. He's at 10:40. Should Russian sports stars be disqualified because of Putin's war? Should there be a blanket ban on taking the knee? A man who's lived his entire life in the fast lane. Formula One supremo Bernie Ecclestone is revved up and giving his verdict on the social dilemmas gripping sport. That's in a high-octane interview very shortly. COVID hysteric Patrick Vallance is rebranded as a green extremist, but does he have any right to be bossing us about on how to save the planet? I say Al, no, but what about my superstar panel of Daily Mail star columnist Amanda Platel, esteemed political journalist John Sargent and broadcaster Ashley James? We'll find out next. Is Kellogg's right to fight back against nanny state junk food rules that will see supermarkets forced to wait for it cancel cereal? Plus, the moment Alec Baldwin discovered he had fatally shot a crew member on a film set has been made public, and it's harrowing.
I do have some very unfortunate news to tell you. She didn't make it.
All of those stories and more in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Tomorrow's newspaper front pages are coming up too in just a few seconds and throughout the next hour. And it's Hoyle versus Hancock in the battle for the most dubious honour of the day. Yes, I'll crown the next greatest Briton and Union Jackass before the hour is out too. But before all of that, the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB Newsroom. A man's been charged with the murder of a 33-year-old woman who's been missing since last week. It's believed Katie Kenyon travelled in a Ford Transit van which headed from Burnley towards the Bolton by Bowland area last Friday morning. The mum of two has not been seen since. Lancashire police say 50-year-old Andrew Burfield is due to appear at Blackburn Magistrates Court tomorrow. The High Court has ruled that government policies on discharging patients from hospital to care homes at the start of the pandemic were unlawful. The case was brought forward by two women whose fathers died from COVID-19 in 2020. Judges said the regulations failed to take into account the risk to elderly and vulnerable residents from non-symptomatic transmission. The Foreign Secretary says the war in Ukraine must act as a catalyst for the West to overhaul its approach to international security. Well, Liz Truss is currently making a keynote foreign policy speech at Mansion House in London. She said the UK will stand up to what she calls aggressors around the world who try to exploit their economic power, and will bring you more on this later on in the evening. Well, meanwhile, the White House says it welcomes Ukraine's invitation to the G20 summit to be held in Indonesia later this year. It's after President Volodymyr Zelensky tweeted that his Indonesian counterpart invited him to the event. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president has accused Russia of blackmail after Gazprom cut off gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria, as both countries refuse to pay in rubles.
Russia is waiting for the moment when a trade area can be used to blackmail Europeans politically, or to strengthen Russia's military machine, which sees a united Europe as a target. The sooner Europe admits that it's inadmissible to depend on Russia in trade, the sooner it will be possible to guarantee stability in European markets.
Councillors in York have voted unanimously to remove Prince Andrew's Freedom of the City of York honour. It's after he was accused of sexual assault by Virginia Giuffre, allegations which he denies and have been settled outside court. The City Council is also calling for the Prince to be stripped of his Duke of York royal title, something that Parliament must vote on. Both Buckingham Palace and a spokesperson for the Duke have declined to comment. City of York councillor Daryl Smalley told GB News they're trying to protect the city's reputation.
Proposed the motion to remove the honorary freedom today, just to distance York from Prince Andrew. I think we've had many months now of our city being linked with him as those allegations came out, as the court case rumbled on, and the subsequent reaction to it.
TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now let's get straight back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now in our Media Buzz. A first look at the front pages hot off the press. The Metro leads with porn MP exposed as they report a probe has been launched into claims a senior Tory was caught watching explicit videos. At least 2 female colleagues have claimed they witnessed him viewing the smut in the chamber and during a committee meeting. 20 warnings missed to stop COVID slaughter in care homes is the newspaper's splash. This is after the High Court ruled the government acted unlawfully by sending untested hospital patients into care homes at the start of the pandemic, which campaigners believe resulted in 20,000 deaths. My superstar panel, back with me now, the Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Platell, the political journalist John Sargent and the broadcaster Ashley James. Now, just when you thought we'd heard the last of COVID chief scaremonger Patrick Vallance, the government's top scientific advisor has now decided to morph himself into a climate change extremist. Yes, Vallance has swapped gloomy pal Chris Whitty for the Crusties at Extinction Rebellion with his latest bid to influence public behaviour, butting into our lives again by calling for people to stop eating meat and to fly less. Now, dishing out advice from Greta Thunberg's playbook, Vallance told a climate change select committee that Brits needed to know what was expected of them on going green, insisting hitting net zero in Britain by 2050 would require behavioural change. Look.
The reality is that behaviour change is a part of reaching net zero. I mean, I think it's unarguable. I'm eating less meat, I cycle to work, and I fly less than I used to. I haven't said in any of those statements I've stopped flying, I don't eat meat. I do. And so I think it's about reduction. Individuals need to know what is expected of them and what they can do, as well as making that easier for them and making the green choice the easy choice.
I guess the creative director of COVID theatre in Britain needed another fearful cause to bang on about now the pandemic is finished in this country. I fully expect Sir Patrick to be gluing himself to oil tankers in the not-too-distant future. Am I being unfair, John Sargent?
Well, no, you're not being too unfair. No, he's got off on completely the wrong tack. He thinks that because he's an advisor, he's going to advise us all. No, his advice goes to the government. The government then decide because they're elected. He is not elected. He will be there come rain or shine, come pandemic or not. It's all very well for him to suggest ways in which, generally speaking, the government could work to avoid greenhouse gases and to make sure we've got a chance of getting to zero carbon by 2050. But to, in any sense, say it's up to you and you and you, apart from anything else, that doesn't work. People just hate that. People really dislike that. And people also dislike other people being sanctimonious, saying, oh, so you're still flying, are you? And all this business.
I can't bear it. And Amanda,
it's
you know
just
what
wrong.
Annoys me is he wants to go back to this whole nudge thing. Do you remember that from COVID? Nudge. I mean, they say nudge, I say propaganda.
He didn't nudge us.
Exactly. It was like,
he put us into a gulag.
Push.
Yeah, this is one of the lockdown guys.
Yeah.
You know, one of chief medical advisor, wasn't he?
Chief scientific advisor.
Scientific advisor, constantly standing out there with all the glums going, the world's going to end, you have to stay in your home for the next 25 years, everyone's going to die. And now he comes out and I just think, he's lecturing us. I mean, he's not going to eat much steak. When is the last time that guy's been invited out for a steak dinner, I ask you? When's the last time any people have said, hey, what's his name? Patrick. Hey, Pat, do you want to come over, to Marbella for the weekend? It does not happen. I mean, this guy
It might do. Lots of people might think he's really nice.
It is not. He's just full of gas, and he just makes me completely sick. He should shut up. He disgraced himself during...
No, you're making it personal. You're making it personal.
It's not personal.
No, but you're saying that he's not attractive. Nobody will want to invite him out.
No, I didn't say he's not attractive.
Well, but you're implying that,
I'm implying that he's a deeply boring man who gave the most terrible advice to this country during a national crisis, and he has the gall to pop up and try and recreate himself and lecture us about how we should live our lives. You know, go and find a vegan burger. That's what I'd say, Pat.
Too personal.
But he's not trying to scare us. He literally says he's not trying to fearmonger. He's just offering suggestions of what we could do. And he said himself he is still eating meat. He is still flying.
Do we
and
care?
I think it's good. Like people, you see climate change and climate crisis all the time, and maybe people want to do something and they don't know what. But I also think it's an incredibly privileged thing to keep talking about going vegan because, number one, it's more expensive. I think I grew up on, like, Heinz baked beans and, I don't know, we wouldn't have afforded, like, a healthy vegan diet, number one. And...
oh, by the way, can I just interrupt there? There is nothing healthy about a vegan diet. All the vegans that I know, terrible skin, constantly collapsing.
All your vegan friends are going to be so upset.
I know, and I say it to their face. And actually, the people who I know who are close to me who were vegan and then started eating meat again, they admit to me I was completely right. I was completely unhealthy as a vegan, and it's not healthy. And we need meat. We're meant to eat meat. And I don't want this bloke telling me not to eat meat. It's none of his business. And actually, what I want even more is I want him to stop using government resources to nudge us. Because, you know, this starts with him at a select committee. Very soon, it's going to be an advertising campaign to terrify children and to say, don't fly, don't go anywhere, don't eat meat, force your parents to buy vegan food. And I don't want to live in that sort of society where the government tries to control the way we live.
I just think it's good to know that we can do things. I also think in an ideal world, we'd all be living like cavemen. Obviously, we can't do that, but we could all do our little bit, and that might be different for what I do to what you do, but it's nice that we can all do our bit to help save the planet. But
But these people, John, they want us to live like cavemen. That's the point, isn't it? The folk like XR and Insulate Britain and one of the other people, Just Stop Oil, they actually want us to go back to pre-Victorian times. They want to
certainly
reduct British society.
It does get a bit addictive if you're an advisor that's been taken as seriously as he has been for more than 2 years. What?
Disgraced advisor.
Well, you may say that, but for people like me sitting there quietly listening to him, I think, oh, he's impressive. Because these people, no, they are very knowledgeable. A lot of their advice was taken during the pandemic correctly.
Incorrect.
No,
he
not
was one
all
of the main
incorrectly.
parties in the 20,000 people who died unnecessarily in care homes today. He's one of the names cited in this.
All right,
Sorry.
OK. I just think, for the sake of argument, we should say there were people trying to do their best in an extremely complicated situation.
No.
And
I'm
particularly Patrick Vallance and their scientific advisors suddenly thrust into the public limelight. Never been there before, never had to do it before.
They got it wrong. And here's the problem. They got it so badly wrong with care homes at the start of the pandemic. And as Amanda says, that has been proven in court today. And then what they did is they overcompensated and they caused vast damage to society.
I don't see why I should defend every single thing the government did during the 2 years of the pandemic. I think that's a bit unfair on me. But think for a moment, though, about the kind of people that you might have had appearing at those news conferences. You know, people who really were power crazy. These people slipped into a sort of controlled...
Well, he seems power crazy to me. He locked me in my house for 2 years and now he's trying to tell me not to eat meat and not to fly anywhere. Do you know what? Anything Patrick Vallance says, I actually do the opposite. I ignore.
I agree.
So I'm going to fly more and I'm going to eat more meat because you know what? That bloke stopped me flying for 2 years.
But that's why it worked. That's why the system won't work. That's why he's the advisor. He's not Prime Minister.
If we went back to caveman, do you think they still had vodka then?
I think they probably did, didn't they? What's vodka made out of again?
I don't care.
Isn't it? Potatoes.
Everyone's had potatoes. Gosh, that's a relief.
Now, chilling new footage has been released showing the moment Alec Baldwin is told Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins has died after he accidentally shot her during filming. This video that I'm about to show you was recorded inside the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office in New Mexico on October the 21st last year, after Baldwin's prop gun fired a live round during a rehearsal for a scene, fatally wounding the 42-year-old crew member. There she is. It comes after Santa Fe County Sheriff Adan Mendoza on Tuesday suggested Baldwin may still face charges for accidentally killing Hutchins, and released a trove of documents and videos from their investigation, including this one.
I do have some very unfortunate news to tell you. What? She didn't make it. Yeah. So Joel's still at the hospital, but the other person involved didn't make it. Sorry. I just didn't want you to hear it outside of here. Is there something we could do for you?
I want to go my way.
Very difficult to watch. Ashley James, John Sargent, Amanda Platel, do stand by because my superstar panel will be back shortly. But also coming up, columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle gives his viscerating take on the lefty hysteria over Angela Rayner's Basic Instinct Gate. But next is Kellogg's right to fight back against nanny state junk food rules that will see supermarkets, wait for it, forced to cancel cereal? We'll debate that after the break as the Media Buzz continues.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
More of tomorrow's news tonight now as the Media Buzz continues. And another front page has just been delivered. Let's have a look. The Daily Telegraph is leading with threats from the Chancellor Rishi Sunak that energy firms will face a windfall tax if they fail to invest in the UK. The paper reports that Sunak's comments suggest a split at the top of government, as Dominic Raab previously described the idea as disastrous. My superstar panel, back with me now, the star Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Platel, the political journalist, former BBC legend and one-time Strictly Come Dancing sensation John Sargent with me too. Yeah. Had to bring it up at least once, John. And making her debut, the broadcaster, the reality star, the mum, Ashley James. Now, the makers of cornflakes think the British government has gone crunchy nuts, and I do too, for introducing nanny state laws that will effectively cancel cereal. Now, stick with me on this. So Kellogg's, whose brands also include Cocoa Pops, Frosties, Crave and Special K, is taking legal action over restrictions set to come into force in October that will ban the promotion of products high in fat, sugar, salt. The rules, which are intended to tackle childhood obesity, could also lead to cereal being banned from prominent supermarket areas, such as checkouts and entrances, forcing consumers to go hunting. Now, Kellogg's has argued that the rules fail to take into account the nutritional value of the milk or yoghurt added to their products, which would save them from being classified as junk food. So they're fighting to get some of the criteria changed, and good on them. I mean, I actually, weirdly, if you're a regular viewer, you know, get very passionate about cereal because I've battled with my weight for all of my life. And as far as I'm concerned, we know that cereal is bad for us. It's a treat. And I'm not going to pretend that a bowl of Cocoa Pops is healthy. The likes of Walkers, right, the crisp maker, are already running scared and changing their recipes to escape this nutritional authoritarianism. So please, don't force watered-down Frosties that taste like normal cornflakes upon me. And it's just crazy what the government is putting food companies through. So that's my opinion on this, Ashley James. What do you think? Is the government right here?
Yeah, I feel like for once tonight I'm actually nodding along with you.
Oh, good. I've won you over. I've won you over.
What I will say is cornflakes are great, and I have cornflakes for breakfast, and it's ridiculous that it's junk food. And I also think this whole talk about the obesity crisis, if they really cared about obesity, they would not have us in a cost of living crisis, because it has been proven that one of the reasons for obesity is poverty. And why do we eat cereal? It's cheap, it's quick. And what is the alternative? And it is ridiculous because nobody eats corn. Sorry, if you're eating dry cornflakes, I need to give you a hug because it is a very sad state of affairs.
You eat dry cornflakes?
Yeah.
Why?
As a snack, though, not for breakfast.
Are you weird? Actually, I know the answer to that question.
Invite me on the show. Is this my serious question on this subject?
Yeah, you weird.
Because I have a very serious answer.
OK, so you eat dry cornflakes?
No, that's not a serious question.
That is. I'm so shocked by that revelation.
I hate the sugar tax. Yeah. I think it's just a complete nonsense in that it doesn't go to the core of the problem where you've got fundamentally parents who are raising children, obese parents who are raising obese children, who don't have proper education in food and providing food. You know, you see kids coming out of school, they're just eating bags of chips, you know, with ketchup on them. And there's a much more fundamental problem that does not
And you that as a form of child abuse?
I do regard that as child abuse. I think people who become obese and raise obese children, who I do think it's a form of child abuse. And in some cases, children have actually been taken away from their parents because their health has been so damaged. But back to your much more serious question.
Yes.
I was discussing this with my friend Kane this evening, and by the time I get home, I will go straight to the cupboard. I will get out my cornflakes box. I'll put my hand in. I'll grab a huge handful. I don't eat them dry. OK, I really got to think about that. Chuck them in a bowl, bit of milk, glass of vodka next to it, and
that's fine.
And that will be. But I love cornflakes, and honestly, you could hide them behind Linda McCartney's frozen vegan sausages in a supermarket, I'd still find them.
Yes. But, John, my point is that as someone who has struggled with weight my whole life, the fact that they are positioned in a certain part of the supermarket, it's actually going to make absolutely no difference. If I want to find the unhealthy food, I'm going to find the unhealthy food.
Well, no, I don't think that's right. I think some people are affected a lot by what's on the shelves, where it's positioned and so on, and otherwise they wouldn't spend so much time in supermarkets making sure this was the case. They do know what they're doing, and it's certainly true that if you can reduce the sugar that people have, you are more likely to be able to tackle the problem of obesity. That's all. And the other thing about it is, someone like me, I never have sugar in my tea or anything like that. I cut down the sugar. Why do I do that? Because I've got used to it. And the truth is that sugar, like tobacco, is actually rather addictive. People get so used to it.
But, John, why did you make the decision to cut it down? Because you were educated, not because there was no sugar in the supermarket.
Well, I happen to be educated, but I don't want to show off about that.
Why not?
No.
Presumably... We changed the habits of my time.
No, the thing is that... But you've got to... Some of this you've got to accept, that if people could get used to it, it would help the obesity problem, and it would help the amount that was spent trying to cure people or trying to get their weight down, which is a terrible problem. But
it's also not fair on people who are slim, Ashley, and want to just have a treat. You know,
is it right for you to say that Ashley's thin?
We are allowed to say
is that okay?
but
Only in this
I'm probably
context.
about to be accused of being a misogynist.
Slim.
Slim is pretty thin.
Self-confessed cornflake.
But I also think it's very dangerous to say that all obese people are obese because they eat too much. There's so many reasons, and like a lot of them are health reasons. So to say that obese parents are cruel to children, I disagree.
No, they're not.
Amanda actually called them a child abuse.
No, well, I think
that's
that's excessive language, frankly.
There are
from
occasions,
Amanda.
actually, I totally concede
Yeah.
that there are occasions when people have medical conditions. They are a minuscule at the number of people who are obese.
No, but a lot of people are
are
affected by their DNA, though, and they just are people who, for whatever reason, just like this kind of stuff, and they can be taken off it. That's my point. If you take some of these things seriously, it's not going to lead to horrendous child abuse and all the rest of it. You can educate people. You can encourage people to eat in a certain way. That's all.
But deeper than cornflakes, though, and I think, like,
certainly, you're quite right.
Again, it comes down to education, like what you were saying. If they really care about health and what we eat, how come we've been in a pandemic for the last 2 years? I've never once heard the government tell us to go out and do exercise or to improve education around food, because a lot of people go and eat what their parents eat, or they don't know any differently. And now we have these ridiculous things in restaurants where you see calories. What does calories mean? Because I could eat 500 pounds of a coffee or a cake, or I could eat 2,000 calories of a salad. Like, I know which one's healthier for me, and I think they're just really...
and also calories on their own,
information.
actually, it's not enough information.
They don't tell you
need
enough.
to know the carb content, you need to know the fat content, you need to know the protein content. But fundamentally, if someone who is struggling with their weight wants to find something to eat, they're going to call Domino's, they're going to buy all of the ingredients that they want, they're going to find ice cream. And I just feel like these companies shouldn't be forced by the government to change their ingredients. We live in a capitalist society, and skinny people, if they want to have a treat and they want to have a bowl of Frosties once a week because they're skinny or they've worked really hard for the rest of the week, they should be allowed to. And it infuriates me, the fact that this is a Tory government, Amanda. This is a libertarian Prime Minister who is opening the door to this type of stuff.
They cannot dictate.
Sometimes I literally feel like Labour's in charge. That's what I can't understand. This is just a root and branch Labour policy.
Dan, I think you're exaggerating, if I may say so. I think you're exaggerating.
Exaggeration, John.
No, but concentrate a little bit, not just on they're doing it and why do we have to do this. You're talking about what can you do at the margin? What can you do to get some people affected? Not everybody, not all of the people around.
Educate people. Educate people about what's in our food. But don't ban people from buying damn cornflakes because they're going to be hidden somewhere in the supermarket. It's just ludicrous.
They can go and buy as much sugar as they like.
Well, of course, that's why it's ludicrous.
And pour it on the stuff.
Why it's ludicrous.
Then they have to take a decision. It's not a decision taken for them by large corporations who know by adding a bit of extra sugar to those people who are addicted to sugar will mean they'll buy more of it next time and more of it the time after that. You can bring down the sugar level.
I think the important thing to remember is, unless you're Amanda, most people have it with milk, and if you're counting it with milk, it does not count as junk food. And I'm sorry, there are worse things in the world than cornflakes.
No, I have it with milk as well.
Good.
But you like it dry and with milk. I can buy it this time. OK. Amanda Patel, stop talking about your personal life. John Sargent and Ashley James, thank you so much. Now, one person who certainly isn't worried about nutritional value is the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. After he was filmed hosting, I mean, he really is a sicko, this bloke, hosting an exquisite banquet for his army's commanding officers. Now, why this is so sick is because, of course, in October last year, North Korea warned its citizens that they must expect to eat less food until 2025 as a result of food shortages from the country closing its border with China in a COVID shutdown. However, and by the way, I spoke to the amazing North Korean defector on the show not long ago. These poor North Korean folk, they have to eat grasshoppers on a daily basis, and look at what the sicko is doing. It doesn't appear, none of it applies to him, does it? And of course, this comes in stark contrast to a propaganda film released earlier this year where we were showing the portly dictator's dramatic weight loss as the North Korean narrator was heard saying his body is completely withered away out of concern for his people. Well, it certainly now looks like Kim is back to feeling like his old self. Coming up, who will be crowned tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jack. That's my superstar panel return to reveal their nominations at 10:50. But next, has lefty hysteria over Angela Rayner's Basic Instinct Gate mutated into a full-blown attack on press freedom? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle is imploring anyone who cherishes a free press to speak out now. He's uncancelled after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Labour deputy Angela Rayner probably never thought there would be this much furore over her legs. Then again, I wouldn't have anticipated a single article about an MP's piece of clothing to result in one of the most chilling attacks on free speech and freedom of the press in modern times. Now, there's been a lot of talk on this issue, but one man whose unfiltered opinion I know you've been waiting for is columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle. So, Rod, I have absolutely no idea what you think about this. So do you agree the comments about Rayner are misogynistic, and do you think a newspaper editor should ever be made to grovel in front of the Speaker of the House?
Good questions, Dan. Good questions, mate. I think they probably are misogynistic if it's not Angela Rayner who's raising them. But now it looks remarkably as if it quite possibly was Angela Rayner who first made this allusion while sitting on the terrace with a bunch of MPs. So it is alleged that a couple of Tory MPs have overheard her saying that she uses this technique to discombobulate the Prime Minister, which is probably a very, very good way of discombobulating the Prime Minister, I would have thought, given the Prime Minister that we have. But that also means that Angela has been rather wreathed in hypocrisy. I saw her sitting on a being interviewed by some woman called Lorraine or Louise or something, and telling us how deeply saddened she was by these sorts of comments. But Angela, if this is true, they are the comments which you yourself made. So we are in a surreal landscape, Dan, and you're absolutely right. You wouldn't expect it to be a case of any issue of press freedom over this. You might not have thought that in a time when Ukraine is being invaded, we have a cost of living crisis,
and 56 MPs are currently under investigation for sexual assault, that a joke about Angela Rayner's legs could possibly be the #1 story in the country. And yet it was on Times Radio, on the BBC. This was the #1 story. And the appalling news that the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who up until now I've rather liked and thought has done a rather good job, summoned the editor of the Mail on Sunday to come and meet him and to be dressed down about having run the article in the first place. This is a disgrace. It is entirely to the Mail on Sunday's credit, A, that they ran the story in the first place, because I want to know what Tory MPs are saying about members of the opposition, if they're sexist or otherwise. I also want to know if Angela Rayner is deliberately doing this in order to discombobulate the Prime Minister. I want to know all that stuff. I want to know what the press tells us. What I don't want is for some desiccated old goat who has been ennobled into the position of Speaker of the House of Commons to suddenly decide that things which he reads in the press are not to his liking and that the Mail on Sunday editor should be given some sort of dressing down. It's an absurdity. And it's to the Mail on Sunday's credit, again, that David Dillon has refused to go along with this preposterous announcement. But it's another part of that thing, Dan, where an apparently minor story, and you know, I heard one Labour frontbench woman saying that what had been said about Angela Rayner was, quote, horrific. Well, you know, it's not horrific, is it? It might not be very nice, it might be sexist, it might be misogynistic, but it's not horrific. The Holocaust was horrific, you know? A child dying in a murder is horrific. This isn't horrific. And all the less horrific if it was Angela Rayner herself who first said this stuff. But it's another one of those issues which suddenly gets blown up out of all proportion, and people take leave of their senses. They use adjectives which shouldn't really be used, and it ends up with the Speaker, who until now has done a really good job, I think, certainly compared to the previous toxic dwarf.
Well, yes, but that's the thing. There was such a low bar that we were all so excited, weren't we, not to have Burko in there. And actually, it means Hoyle is, I think, embracing the power a little bit too much. But, Rod, I think this was the worst sort of example of Liberal groupthink over the past few days, and I completely agree with you. It was brilliant that the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday were prepared to hit back today. I mean, Dan Hodges, their political columnist, actually discovered that 3 more MPs, Rod, including, by the way, 1 female MP, claimed that they heard Angela Rayner boast about this herself on the terrace of the House of Commons. Now, that is a legitimate story, surely.
It's a legitimate story, and it's quite funny. And I'm sure at the time that Angela Rayner made those comments, if indeed she did, and there's more and more evidence to show that she did, it would have been a joke, and it would have been a light-hearted joke. And I think Angela Rayner would have been far better off leaving it as a joke and leaving it as being something light-hearted, rather than using it as another stick to beat the evil, misogynistic, patrician, white male Tory party, which is what, sadly, in the end, she did do. She's a formidable speaker, Rayner, and she's a formidable performer at Prime Minister's questions and at the dispatch box. She's one of Labour's bright hopes. She doesn't need to wrap herself in this entirely cosmetic outrage over something which she herself said.
Yeah.
So it would appear.
Well, Rod, I want to play you, actually, the fascinating podcast that she recorded in January, because what it actually shows is that this has completely confected the outrage that we've seen from Angela Rayner this week, because when she was talking about it back in January, she thought the whole thing was hilarious. Listen.
That's right.
There is a tint of misogyny in it. I've got to say, you know, I get quizzed on. Every time I do a PMQ, somebody has an opinion on what I want. Did you see the meme about Sharon Stone, like I was doing at the last PMQs? I was mortified. You what? Like, they did this whole, like, meme about me apparently doing the whole, you know, the whole... I was like, when did they do that?
What's that? Like, I hadn't seen that at all.
Did you not see, like, the Fatal Attraction thing when the whole thing.
I mean, I've seen the film, but I wasn't aware that...
I wasn't aware I did it, but apparently, like, there was this whole meme about how my dress was, like, you know, a bit revealing, but I didn't think it was. It was a perfectly suitable Karen Millen in the sale, by the way.
But what was the theory, that you were doing that to distract Boris?
I don't... don't take much, does it? I don't need to do that.
There seems to be, and I know that you're ideologically opposed.
So, Rod, there was nothing misogynistic about it in January. It was all a great laugh. And I think it absolutely backs up what the MPs told the Mail on Sunday, because clearly Angela Rayner found this whole idea quite funny.
Yeah, without question. And I think that little exchange that you just played is kind of to Angela Rayner's credit. You know, she's able to take a joke, she's able to laugh about it. They got the name of the film wrong. It's not Fatal Attraction, it's Basic Instinct. Yes. We all know that film. And it presented her as a normal human being who would have a laugh the same way as any of us would have a laugh. There is an element of difficulty for women in the House of Commons, without question. We know that it's a male preserve. There is also a case, and I think this is kind of indisputable, that women get knocked, A, if they're dressed as frumps, and B, if they're dressed in an alluring way. It is very hard for them to do the right thing in terms of what they wear. I would go along with that entirely. But to suddenly cloak yourself in this outrage, in this hurt, this deep hurt that someone could have said such a thing, and all the other front benchers getting up on their hind legs and claiming that it is a grotesque, horrific infringement, you know, it's an absurdity, and it is exactly as you say, Dan. It's liberal overreach, and when it gets to the point of the Speaker deciding that he's going to whip the Mail on Sunday into line, then it's a real problem. And to Angela Rayner's credit again, she said she's not comfortable about that, which I think is to her credit.
Rod, I want to bring my superstar panel in on this. Tonight we've got the Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, who actually wrote about this for the first time back in January. There may never have been this scandal if it wasn't for Amanda Platel's column. John Sargent is here too, and so is Ashley James. Ashley, you disagree with Rod, don't you? You actually think what happened is something for women to feel deeply upset about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very easy for you to say that it's harmless, but this article is going to follow her around for the rest of her life. She's got, I think, 2 young sons. It will probably follow them around. And this is not an isolated incident. We know, as you mentioned, that there is a culture of sexism and misogyny in Parliament, and that trickles down into the language that's used in the media, the way we obsess about women and what they wear, especially in politics, when it shouldn't matter. And also, this is really important because it shows the language that we see as acceptable, or how it basically objectifies women. And we are sick to death of being judged on how we are dressed. I mean, she wasn't even dressed inappropriately. She was wearing tights. And I also think it's really important not to misjudge what she said in her podcast, because she said it was mortifying, it was misogynistic. So she wasn't laughing about it. And I think as women, most of us will have been in a situation where we feel uncomfortable, and it was a comedy environment on the podcast, and you kind of laugh through the discomfort. But she did say it was mortifying and it was misogynistic. And the fact of the matter is, we shouldn't even be debating this. Like, there were much more important things going on in the world and even in the country than what she was wearing. And it's not an isolated incident, because we saw, you know, in 2017, an article with Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon wearing dresses saying, forget Brexit, let's talk about Legxit. We don't talk about men in this way. And we know that there is a huge issue with sexism and sexual violence in the UK, as there is across the world. And it is not harmless, because this trickles down, this culture and this use of language. And I think it's really important to stand up for misogyny. And I think it's really great that Sir Lindsay Hoyle did that.
OK, Rod, how do you respond?
Well, hang on, Ashley. Much of that I would agree with. Were it not for the case that on at least one occasion, and probably 2 or 3 occasions, Angela Rayner hasn't merely laughed about it, but actually brought it up herself as being something which is funny. She thinks it's funny. You know, I
Where did
don't know
say
who
it's
you are
funny?
to tell her that she doesn't think it's funny. She clearly does think it's funny. She thinks it's funny on the House of Commons terrace when she was talking to other Tory MPs. She thought it was funny in that podcast. You know, I don't doubt that there's a culture of sexism in the House of Commons, and John and Amanda, you know, who've hung around there will know far more about it than
Well, actually, I want to hear one of John's stories on this, because, John, is it true that when you were back there were MPs, I'm told by reliable sources that you said there were MPs who would try and look up Thatcher's skirts?
They were, no. It's true. I was obviously much younger then, more shockable. But there was an old Tory MP who said, "Oh, I love it. She comes to my constituency. She has to go up this staircase, and I'm there at the bottom. I can see it all." And I thought, what on earth is he talking about? But no, he was excited by Margaret Thatcher walking up this staircase. So that has gone on for ages. I mean, it's not sort of... But would I have then on the BBC said, a senior Conservative MP admitted to me in a private conversation? I mean, you wouldn't. So a lot of that, you know, I can't say, oh, it was like this, because things have changed and people get very worked up about these issues, as Ashley's pointed out. I mean, with very, very well, Ashley, if I may say. You know, you've gone through all the main arguments, and I agree with them. I mean, it's.
But Amanda, you wrote this column in the first place, so
John. Sorry, John, it wasn't Nick Fairbairn, was it?
No, it could have been, though. He's dead, so we can say that.
Amanda, you wrote about Angela Rayner's appearance in the first place. So you think it's acceptable? You think it's acceptable as a female columnist in Britain's most read newspaper to comment on Angela Rayner's appearance? You think that's acceptable? So you disagree with Ashley?
I do. I agree with a lot of what Ashley said, but I disagree with two things. First of all, I've written about Boris Johnson's legs many times, and many male politicians. So it's not just women that get written about. And I think it's really important that it's been established that Angela thought this was funny, right? She joked about it. Now she's taken the high moral ground. It is totally synthetic. Rod is right. She's a great politician. She could well be the next leader of the Labour Party. And what I really, really am upset with is this constant reference to saying that these comments are misogynistic. That means woman-hating. That's a really, really serious word, and that should be preserved for the Russians who are raping Ukrainian women in front of their husbands right now.
Good point.
That should be kept for true. It doesn't matter.
Final word to you, Rod.
You dilute the term if you start using that about Angela Rayner's legs.
I agree. Final word to you, Rod.
Well, I think in a sense Ashley got it right in what she said. We shouldn't be debating this. I mean, it should be a comparatively minor issue. If it was just the Tory MP saying it, I think it's a bit sexist and a bit rude and derogatory towards Angela Rayner. But given that it probably came from her in the first place, it's a non-story. It's just something funny, and credit to Amanda for having broken it in the first place.
Thanks, Rod.
And I think from there...
Yep. It became a story because of the gross overreaction.
Yeah.
And the fact that everyone wants to try and turn this into some sort of new theme. But Rod Liddle, great to chat to you. We'll speak next week, Rod. But coming up, it's Hoyle versus Hancock in Greatest Britain and Union Jack as tonight's coronation in mere seconds, right after we take a look at something rather special coming up on tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, he left one of the world's most successful bands after being cancelled simply for expressing an interest in politics. Now, former Mumford & Sons musician Winston Marshall sits down with Dan to explain why free speech means more than gold discs and Grammys. He'll reveal what really happened in the shock split and speaks out against what he's described as Spotify's Soviet-style censorship of outspoken artists. Another must-see interview coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to that. But it's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. With me to reveal theirs, my superstar panel return. Amanda Patel, your Greatest Britain nominee, please.
I'm going to nominate Rod Stewart. because he, of all the men, quite a lad in his time and a really cool guy, he's spoken out in support of this incredibly awful shortage of hormone replacement therapy. I think he got it a bit in the ear from his wife when she was going through it. Fantastic that it takes, he said, unless men start talking out about this, it's not going to, the whole thing's not going to be solved. So good on you, Rod Stewart.
Good nomination. John Sargent, yours, please.
Well, after this week, we've been through it all. It has to be Angela Rayner. Why? Because...
Oh, goodness
I feel
me,
sorry.
I'm sick of talking about her, for God's sake.
No, pull yourself together, Dan, because I feel sorry for her. I want to cheer her up. What can I do? Well, I can nominate her.
John,
Greatest Britain, that's all.
She is
Cheer
loving
up.
the publicity. She is loving this. And you know why she's particularly loving it? Because she looks like a future Labour Party leader, even though I think she'd be the worst mistake to happen for Britain for a very, very long time. And Keir Starmer looks like he's flailing about, as ever. Ashley James, your Greatest Britain nominee.
Can I just say it can't get any worse than it currently is? But anyway, you're going to hate my Greatest Britain.
Oh, goody.
Because it's actually Sir Lindsay Hoyle.
Oh, because you love someone who's just trying to muzzle the press, do you, Ashley?
As I've already established, he has defended the press. He's rejected reports to kick them out of Parliament, so let's not distort the truth. But I like the fact that he's standing up for the continuous misogyny that not just women face in society, but particularly women in politics.
Do you know what, Ashley? I think Lindsay Hoyle probably has enough to worry about within Parliament, given that we're hearing MPs watching porn in the House. So I think he can just let newspapers report what they want to report, and he can sort out Parliament. So, look, sort of by default, I'm afraid to say, Amanda, the Greatest Britain winner today, Rod Stewart. No, he is a great man, though. He is a great man, and we always love celebrating him. And it's very good that he's got on board with this important campaign. Union Jackass time now. Amanda Patel, your nominee.
I'm not expecting to win this one. It is Angela Rayner.
Oh, stop!
Angela...
What are you doing to me?
Stay with me, stay with me.
Is this a practical
it's
joke?
Angela Rayner's hairdresser for giving her those hideous hair extensions.
Oh, Amanda.
I'm sorry.
Is that misogynistic,
Suck it in, Dan.
Is that misogynistic of Amanda, Ashley?
You don't hate women because you hate their hair extensions, please. We've not come to that.
John Sargent, your nominee.
Right, no, it's nominated Angela Rayner, as I said, because I feel sorry for her. Cheer her up, that's all. She's never expected this. She will live with it for years.
No, but this is your Union Jackass. She can't be your Greatest Britain and your Union Jackass.
Well, yes,
she can.
You said that, all right, maybe you said Greatest Jackass. No, the Jackass I was really thinking of, and it's terrible. I think I actually pinched this one. The Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, for being stupid to summon the press to answer themselves over this story. So that's a mistake. He had a very good start as Speaker, and it's all gone wrong in a very brief, silly thing to do.
No, I completely agree with you. I like that nomination a lot more. And Ashley James, your Union Jackass.
My Union Jackass is Matt Hancock for not only breaking the law, but absolutely failing to protect care home patients and the devastation that he caused with that.
Do you know what? The reason I spoke about this at the top of the show is because I spent weeks and weeks researching what went on with this care home scandal. And I wanted to play some of those clips from the Lockdown Inquiry interview I did with Matt Hancock. And unfortunately, and I don't say this lightly, Matt Hancock is lying about a lot of what went on. And Amanda Patel, today, he tried to throw Public Health England under the bus. And by the way, I'm not saying Public Health England got everything right. They certainly didn't. But the evidence proves Matt Hancock was warned about asymptomatic transmission. He was warned about releasing old people from hospitals into care homes. I literally have the emails, and I read the emails out to him. And so I'm angry about this.
But, Dan, you should be angry. And I thought that was brilliant that you recapped that today when this story broke. But you've got to brace yourself because he's writing his diaries.
Oh, yes. He revealed that. He revealed that on this show.
And he will be totally exonerated by himself when we know he is up to his neck in it.
The public inquiry will get him.
Yeah. Indeed, I think it will. Well, fabulous superstar panel tonight. Although I've got to choose my winner, don't I? You know what? I am going to make Sir Lindsay Hoyle my Union Jackets, just because Matt Hancock, he wins it often. And Lindsay Hoyle has equally annoyed me today. Amanda Patel, John Sargent, Ashley James, brilliant debut on the Superstar panel. Thank you so much to you for your company tonight. I've really enjoyed the show. I'm, of course, back tomorrow from 9 p.m. Thank you for all of your support this week. Headliners is next. Good night.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Dry and bright again for most tomorrow. It will be a bit of a chilly start once more, with temperatures tonight under clear skies again getting down close to and a touch below freezing in some places. High pressure continues to bring the dry, fine weather, but the winds coming around the high pressure just feeding in more cloud again across eastern areas, so that cloud thickening up somewhat overnight. That increasing cloud will help to stop temperatures falling too far, but for